rather more acute version of that. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to hear from you. Sir.
Yes,
Lots of people. Sir, and then over there.
wait for the mic.
Yep. Speak into the mic, I'm afraid you
Okay,
have to
can you
speak
hear me?
directly. Yes.
Yeah. Two thoughts. One is, I take your point. Democracy may not be the best way of choosing the best leader, but a la Popper and Churchill, the order of the boot is its huge strength. I mean, that's the great thing. We might not choose the best. Exactly. Yeah. And the other small point, I'm rather with Bonnie Greer, this point about the monarchy. I don't think it's the Queen herself, but it's sovereign parliament. It's the royal prerogatives. It's those hidden things.
Or the crown in parliament.
Well, it's the crown in parliament. It is her powers
those royal prerogatives that run the BBC, which is above politics. And no one seems to know about that.
Absolutely. It is absolutely above it. And Quang goes to a certain extent as well.
I think we were over there, and then we'll go to this side, and then we'll go to the back.
Hi, I campaigned quite heavily and quite recently for something that I believe, and I believe David also believes, if I remember from Daily Politics, is a much better type of democracy, which is the AV. That lost. And now we're stuck with a very bent and completely indefensible and totally undemocratic system, which is first past the post.
Absolutely.
What does this country do?
March.
What does this country do from now on? I mean, voting didn't work.
Try again.
Absolutely.
Just before you go, there's a lady there, and then we'll go to the... Sorry.
I just wanted to ask, you mentioned it being worrying that elections can be seen as a business or a palaver and so on, but there's a tradition of voter apathy in Britain, with perhaps a low voting turnout. Do the panel have views on whether voting should be obligatory or...
Okay, while we answer that, perhaps the microphone could travel over there. Do we want to respond to the apathy issue?
It's not just here that we have a problem, is it? I mean, it's pretty low in the States.
Do we know why? What's done it? Because it's a trend rather than an always, isn't it?
Sense of disenfranchisement, they keep saying. But I mean, the alternative is what the Australians do, which is just force everybody to vote. It's a criminal offence not to. I don't know if it works any better there. If only Australians can offer an opinion.
It wasn't so bad in the States in November. In the presidential election, people came out. We don't know what they're going to do in 2012. I think elections depend on how much you, as the electorate, believe your vote's going to affect what's going to happen. Yeah. If you don't think it's going to if it's going to make any difference, as first past the post would, you don't vote. Why should you? Why should you bother? So it's a question of how much you think your vote matters.
I just want to say something about AV. The first thing is, to be honest, I prefer AV. It's my preferred system, but it is a fairly moderate change. Yes, I mean, let's be clear about it. Now, I am in favour of moderate changes. I have gone from being one thing to somebody who measures good change in terms of its kind of moderation. So what happened? Part of what happened is we just failed to convince people it was an important enough thing to do.
Yes.
We did, you and I, and other people. I mean, I'm not doing an attack on just an attack on you, but if you're going to get people to change something like the voting system, you have to convince a lot of people that changing from the thing that they know to the thing that they don't know is something they really...
Exactly.
And you know what, we just didn't do it. And it's going to take
campaign.
us... And I learned quite a lot of lessons from that myself.
It was a bad campaign.
It took 2 referenda on devolution, so if it's any consolation, you can get there, yes.
If we can accept that all governance is a matter of oligarchy... Sorry,
I'm just...
I asked a question and no one answered.
Can I just say, I think the royal prerogative matters not at all. It is not the reason why the BBC is like it is. If you like, it is the kind of little sort of curlicue that we put up on it. If people really seriously wanted to change the BBC, it would change.
Disagree. In fact, it's very rarely used. It's Parliament Act part of that. It's very, very rarely used, but it was used by this government this time to ensure that we don't have a general election for 5 years. We had nothing to say about that.
What about the House of Lords? Okay, can we keep a little bit of order here?
Democracy, right?
No, I just wanted to suggest, if you said that the governance of a nation, and certainly of this state, the British state, is a matter of changing oligarchies. Democracy's task is to control these oligarchies and attempt to reshuffle them as far as is possible, and above all to prevent oligarchies from becoming self-electing and self-perpetuating. But on the other hand, there's been a long school of thought, particularly in England, which says there is an establishment which is an immovable oligarchy. And that analysis goes all the way back beyond Anthony Sampson's classical books about establishments. Do you think, panel, that this is still the case and that democracy, certainly in this country, is very limited in the impact it can have on pre-existing and immovable oligarchies?
We get the picture. Can we go back now? There's a gentleman there and then two people there whilst the panel responds to that.
Well, I just responding immediately because I completely agreed with your first part about the recycling point and your worry that there may be within the recycling mechanism, as it were, something very solid and permanent that doesn't get shuffled, which is the establishment. And just a historical point, that if you look through the 20th century, you will see a movement which one could call, I think, a movement of democratization, in which a deferential culture in Britain and elsewhere towards the establishment is being blown apart in various ways. I mean, I think one of the great features, as it were, that's shown in Britain with respect to what's sometimes called public intellectuals is that the idea of a public intellectual doesn't get much of a grip in Britain because nobody's that deferential, right? You can set people up in some countries and say they're going to speak with authority, but here I'm afraid everybody's going to have a say, and that idea of the deferential culture towards an establishment is less secure in Britain than it ever was. And funnily enough, although I'm not a supporter of this person myself, the real movement of that transformation of the British establishment came through Margaret Thatcher and her cabinets, which contained lots of people who had rather different backgrounds and cultivated this sort of unsquirish attitude.
You're not worried by the return of the old Etonians?
Oh no, I am worried about the return.
No, I think Simon being a slightly romantic, because I've sat on several quangos in this country, and I can tell you a quango has pretty much absolute authority to change an institution or the lives of the people affected by the quango as it wishes to do. We do not elect people on quangos, but they have budgets and they do what they like.
Okay, I'm going to have to take, because we're getting short of time, so I'm going to take 3 questions in a row. Seth.
Thanks very much. I don't know if the panel watches the television programme Peep Show, but if they do, they might have noticed, I've heard the quotation from one of the characters where he says, "You can't trust people. People buy Coldplay CDs and voted for the Nazis." It puts me in mind of what Robin Dunbar was saying, in that they've both hit on the same idea that we make terrible choices sometimes in democracies. And isn't the real problem not democracy itself, but our crap choices? And shouldn't we educate ourselves and take some more responsibility and be a little bit more British about it?
Thank you very much. Well, can we... I'm sorry to have you running around, but hand up there. And there was another one there somewhere. But yeah, okay.
2 short points. Firstly, democracy in the sense of order of the boot has been a start. One needs many other things, such as the rule of law, protection of minorities to have an effective democracy. Secondly, we've been thinking about voting. The advantage of living in a market economy is that we have enormous powers as consumers, which is largely untapped at the moment, but can be much more powerful than voting once every 5 years.
Thank you. And yeah.
A couple of points more than questions. Firstly, the only non-symbolic power left of the monarchy in this country is, in fact, to remove a government that refuses to go, as has happened once in history, and is therefore a pro-democratic institution. The second point about quangos is, again, if you scratch the surface of it, we think of quangos as non-elected busybodies. The Human Fertilisation and Embryology Commission was a quango that has been abolished, that had the best collection of expertise on very difficult fertility issues in this country that we have, and we have got rid of it. We have got rid of a great deal of that. There are times when what you don't want is election. There are times when what you want is expertise. The third point I wanted to make, which is kind of a question, is I was very pleased to hear, I think, Simon bring up the question of participatory democracy that is not elected, deliberative democracy. What people are doing on Twitter right now, this is a real serious social movement. But there is a possibility that that can become a lynch mob, and I wonder what the panel thinks of that.
Great, thank you very much. Now, I'm afraid we are running out of time. So what I'm going to do is ask the panel to pick from those questions, should we fire the people rather than change the system, or educate them, the power of consumption, residual powers of the monarchy, and the danger of the lynch mob. Pick which you like, and we'll go along before we have to shut down.
I like the Twitter question. I think that's the most important question that we face now in our democracy, and is the internet, is the fact that people are talking to one another. Can it become a lynch mob? Yes.
Sorry, you're looking at me. There's a light right in my eye, so I can't quite tell.
I'm sorry, David.
No, that's okay.
I was offering you the choice of that enticing menu of observations from the audience.
I just want to say something really very quickly, and it comes out of Robin's earlier provocation, and then comes out that I don't for 1 second believe that most people vote for somebody because they're taller. I don't quite know how how that research
but
went
they
wrong.
Do.
No, they don't. I tell you how we know they
That's
don't.
The outcome.
Because 46% of people voted for McCain even at the last election. Why did 46% of the people not notice that he was shorter than Obama, and so on? So I think there is a slight problem. It comes back to your thing about crap choices. It is true. We make decisions for all kinds of reasons, and some of them are strange. But it is odd that when you aggregate out what happens when you consult a lot of people, you get better decisions than when you keep the consultation within a group of very, very few people. And that is one of the great lessons, I think, of democracy.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it require that those people are educated?
No.
Not necessarily.
You're going to have to continue this in the bookshop, or we're not going to get across the panel.
I'd actually like to come back to Bonnie calling me a romantic, because I'm not a romantic. I'm not a romantic because I don't think it's done. I don't think we're at a stage in which one could say we've achieved democracy or that this is the most democratic. That's exactly what I don't think. I'm an idealist because I think it's never over. And I just want to finish with a final quote, this one from philosopher Richard Dawkins, who says, "Freedom of speech is a condition of legitimate government, not a distinctive emblem of Western culture that might be generously abridged or qualified for other cultures that reject it." This idea that democracy involves an exposure to every critique, it seems to me central to it, and long may it continue.
Robin, you have 15 seconds.
Right. Let me offer you the Hutterites as an example of how small-scale communities are. They will not allow their communes, if you like, to get above 150 in size, because they cannot control the members of the community by peer pressure alone. They have to have a police force. And I think, in a sense, that's our dilemma. In reality, what democracy ought to be about is a sense of obligation and reciprocity to all other members of society, so we get the best deal for everybody. But the reality is we can only maintain those kinds of ideals on this very small scale towards the people we kind of know and love. And our dilemma, in a way, it always seems to me, is how to generalize that small-scale capacity to the very large scale to get nation-state-sized communities actually working better with each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. At 4 o'clock, the age of transparency. At 5:30, the return of revolution, maybe pre or after.
Some of our books are for sale.
And if you wish to continue to harass the question you didn't get to ask, go to the Globe bookstore, where all the authors on this panel will be very, very pleased to speak to you, particularly if you buy their books. Thank you, and please join me in thanking our panel.